While we're waiting for some of the actors to come on out, I'd like to introduce Dr. Andy Chambers, who is a professor of psychiatry at Indiana University School of Medicine in Indianapolis. He graduated from Center College, Kentucky in 1991, Duke University School of Medicine in 1996, and Yale University Department of Psychiatry residency and fellowship programs in psychiatry and neuroscience research in 2000 and 2002. He completed his fellowship training in addiction psychiatry at IU in 2012 and was director of the IU program from 2012 to 25, where he has trained 75% of Indiana's output of addiction psychiatrists. Dr. Chambers' work in the neuroscience of addiction psychiatry has been funded by NIDA and NIAAA. He has done pioneering work in understanding the neurobiology connecting neurobiology, connecting mental illness and addiction, and developing a new experimental medication approach to opioid addiction. His clinical practice with Aspire Indiana Health in Indianapolis. He is the author of seminal textbooks for the field of addiction psychiatry, including the 2x4 model from 2018 and Introduction to Addiction Psychiatry 2025 for medical students, residents, and allied healthcare providers, and scientists in training. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I actually meant to get another mic. Hey, Dwayne, would you mind grabbing another mic for me? It's back on that shelf back there. Thank you. So while we're waiting for that, can I get just a general impression of the show?
Absolutely. Gosh, I'm still a little bit stunned. And, it's such great acting, and there's so many layers to it, right? So many micro worlds of individual relationships, and then sort of on the community level, and how dynamics that are happening within an individual's brain and between individuals kind of creates a whirlwind, almost like a hurricane. I think the play just really is brilliantly written. I think it's kind of like the language in it is a little bit timeless, like it covers centuries, like it's a mishmash of our language, English language. So it has a little bit of a Shakespearean, but I can understand it, right? So it has that vibe. I think that it's really interesting. The clothing was also timeless. It covers a lot of decades of American history, really. It has a little bit of Handmaid's Tale going on. It has the 20s and the 30s in it. It's just really, and it kind of reminds you that, the risk of fascism is ever present. You can't get past it. That it's always kind of in the background in different eras and different communities, different parts of the world. It's a timeless dynamic in thinking about the origins of it and why we confront it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to introduce our actors real quick. This is Brian Hartz, who played John Proctor. Doug Powers, who played Reverend Paris. Hannah Embry, who played Abigail. And Morgan Morton, who played Elizabeth Proctor. So I think that actors have to go through a certain amount of psychological reckoning in playing these sorts of characters. And I think one of the things that was really interesting to me was the power dynamics, the fascism and everything that you were just talking about. And I know that you have a background in addiction. Do you feel like power is something that can be addictive? And do you see that in the relationships here and an addiction for power?
Yeah, addiction itself, we're susceptible to addiction. All of our brains are. And addiction is kind of like a fascism inside your own head, because it's a compulsion to use a drug or to do a behavior despite all the negative consequences, despite the truth that you see in your own eyes of the harm and destruction, you keep doing it, and you're compelled to do it. And you know, it's a little bit like slavery. In fact, the ancient Roman terminology for addiction is actually related to the concept of slavery. And you know, I think ultimately fascist movements are about power and control and enslaving people's thoughts. And you know, I think also we are wired, all of us, to in one way or another be both leaders and followers, and so the whirlwind can whip up and get going, and so there's definitely a connection there. And I think the cast, yeah, I can get it. They really put their hearts into this, and it was really compelling. So it was a really great depiction. You guys did such a great job. It's a little bit stunned still, getting over what I just saw. I've never seen a Crucible, so I'm new to it. So it was brilliant, so timely. Oh my gosh, awesome production.
Thank you. Yeah, and also joining us on stage is Charlie Weimer, who played Reverend Hale, and Eric Bryant, who is our director, and also Danforth. And we also have some cast members in the audience as well, so thank you for being here. So would anyone in the cast like to talk about that idea of power as an addiction and how you were dealing with that as a person playing a character? Putting you in the hot seat. It's not that deep, Mr. Hale. Yeah, no, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think about the power? Why was Abigail looking for power? I constantly am wondering why Abby is doing what she's doing. I mean, is it for love? Is it for power? What is it for? What do you think?
Great question. I think there's a lot of reasons why she's doing what she's doing. I think something that really sticks with me is the ways in which, as like a young woman in Puritan culture, she has no agency. Like, she's told what to do, what to wear. She's not allowed alone in a room with a man. Like, there's just so much structure and control. And throughout this play, she's able to take power away from those people, from the people who shamed her, people who scorned her. She was able to turn against them and beat them to death through her deception. And I don't know, she talks about them all as hypocrites, and a lot of what she attributes to that way of thinking is from John. John's the one who changed the way she saw the Puritans around her. He's the one who opened her eyes to this culture and the ways in which she'd been lied to in her church and in her community. And then she took those ideas and really ran with them, took them pretty far, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know, at great cost. So, but also she's young, and she was in love and hurt, and trying to reclaim any of that power and that agency in the most extreme way possible. But I think we can all relate to that, like, that need and that desperation, even if we're not doing what Abigail chose to do.
Right. So, Dr. Chambers, like, what do you think, like, so one of the big principles of the Crucible is, you know, moral integrity versus survival. Like, how does facing that kind of conflict impact a person?
Well, gosh, I mean, we all do experience that conflict, don't we? I mean, there's obligations, there's the decision about being, protecting yourself, protecting other people, and these are dilemmas. You know, these are Kobayashi Maru dilemmas where there's no right answer. And glad y'all picked up on that.
We have some smart people on the stage here. Fan club.
But I think that's kind of, again, kind of in this whirlwind, when things get really difficult in this kind of political scale whirlwind of power. because we're all imperfect, right? We're all imperfect. We have our secrets. We've had our transgressions. And in this whirlwind, you are confronted with, that anyone can be a victim. Anyone can be victimized by the politic because we're all imperfect, and that they just find what you've done imperfect. So, how do you protect yourself, and then, what's worth protecting if you're become part of the whirlwind yourself, right? So it's just an incredible, I think that you guys acted it so well, and every character, there's really no black and white characters, right? Every character, you could see every person on stage is in this conflict, this whirlwind, right? On some level. I mean, some are worse than others, right? But, so I think it's a very real story that we're all confronting at different times. Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering, like, Morgan, you had a really interesting character because, she feels betrayed by John from the beginning, but then they kind of come back together in the end. Like, how did you feel about that arc and, like, the sort of redemption and everything? Because, like, I know, like, a lot of people think of Elizabeth as she's, she is cold and she's, whatever. It's like, but she also was cheated on. So, like, I don't know, like, how did you approach the character and thinking about those moral dilemmas?
Yeah, I think for me, Elizabeth is very logical. I think that I wanted to bring sort of a groundedness to her so that even when she was cold and before they reconciled at the end, it was always about trying to open his eyes to the fact that he is bewitched by her in sort of a different way. And I think the coldness, I don't know, we talked about like shame a lot, and like of course John Proctor feels so much shame, but so does Elizabeth, you kind of find out at the end. And so they're just wrapped, I mean, any of us who've had a long-term relationship with anyone of any kind, you just can get wrapped in a cloud of shame and not see the other person through that. And so I think we don't get to see this happen, but through the 3 months of her being in prison, some of that cloud dissipates and she is able to step back and kind of take some self-reflection. And so for me, her character arc is internal, and is really driven by, her time in prison. And so when she sees John at the end, it's sort of like, well, just let me see him one more time. I just need him to know. I need him not to die thinking that he's not a good man, because he is, And so for me, it's a very satisfying arc.
Well, I would love to open it up to some questions from the audience or discussion points. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Oh, I wonder, am I loud enough? I don't know if I'm projecting.
You know what? Let me come up and give you a mic.
I'll push it in. Okay, so I remember reading this in high school. We're like, oh God, slogging through this really long book play in high school. So, and what really resonated with us was the Mean Girls. And how the Mean Girls, there was the key mean girl, and you were very good. The key mean girl who kind of managed and manipulated the girls around her. And then it kind of spread from that to the rest of the community in terms of pointing the finger at different people and trying to deflect the blame or deflect whatever is going on. So what got me was, it's kind of a mob mentality, but it's like, okay, we recognize that we see it going on. How do we fight it? How do we see it happening to ourselves? And how do we fight it? And how do we warn the others around us that it's happening to help them fight it as well?
Yeah, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Chambers. Like, how do you fight mob mentality?
Oh,
Well,
Well, yes, vote.
So, yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, a couple reflections on that, on your question, too, is like, it's also, what's happening with the judge, the head judge of the Supreme Court, right? And his consistent stance that, you know, overturning this is a threat against my authority or the authority of the state, right? That, you know, and he's he's clearly entertaining, he could be wrong, but he's kind of saying it doesn't matter because the power and the authority of the state is more important than whether or not we murder people, right? And that is very threatening, right? That comes from the top. And I think at the same time, you're hearing, you know, toward the end, right, these doubts being expressed like, you know, there could be, people are not liking what's happening, and your authority is going to be threatened by the people, right? And there's a lot of dividing and conquering going on through the play, right, through these more narrow lanes of, you know, and there are people like your character in the minister, your character had a huge evolution in there, which is really interesting to see. You know, began the process of trying to break down these lanes, right, of divide and conquer. And, you know, I think also the realization that in this whirlwind, there really is no, it's kind of like a group dynamic where there's no, ultimately there isn't, the irony is there is no authority because it's being carried and everybody's caught up in it. So I think what I was going through, I mean, I don't know about you all, but what I was going through was kind of thinking about, you know, I do believe that the center or the average, most people are good people, and there just has to be some kind of unification overcoming the dividing and conquer, where ultimately the authority has to be kind of shown that you're not going to kind of get away with knocking out the majority or the center. You know, that's what I went through in seeing this play. So I don't know if you have a counter thought to that or additional thought.
Well, it's almost like it's, to go back to your studies in addiction and things like that.
Yeah.
It's really the going along with the crowd, things like that, and it's how do you fight that when it's overwhelming that you should go along with the crowd.
Yeah, it is. It's very powerful. The other thing we're learning about addiction is that it's not just it's a disease of the brain that attacks motivation, what you're motivated to do in your decision making, but it's also a disease of the brain that taps into circuits that control interpersonal relationships. Because when we get addicted to drugs, we kind of become addicted to a drug as if that's a loved one, right? There's an attachment to that drug. And, you know, our brains are so powerful as members of groups. We are designed to work in packs and tribes and groups, right? It's so powerful. And so much of our intellectual and emotional resources are totally devoted toward working in groups, right? And, you know, it's an Achilles heel too, in some ways, right? I don't know if everybody's read the book by Harari. It's called *Sapiens*. I totally recommend this book because it talks about how our species becomes so powerful on the planet and destructive. And part of what he's talking about is it's not just our intelligence and the fact that we can use our hands and we walk around on 2 feet. It's that we are so powerful as group animals, and one of the great cognitive powers we have that is communicating fictions. That fictions are actually part of our power, right? And fictions can do great things, but they can also be incredibly destructive, right? And so, money, from a certain point of view, is a fiction. It's just a symbol, right? But adhering to the idea of money makes our economy work. That's one example. And so, I think that's kind of what this is about too, is like fact and fiction and understanding, you know, how we can find the resolution between destructive fiction and truth in some way along these dynamics.
Yeah, I think the power of storytelling is so important in that as well, because especially in theater, like people can come to the theater whether you're, political or not, whether you're, a voter or not, or maybe you're very left wing, maybe you're very right wing, whatever. But you can come to a play and still gain empathy and feel that there is something interesting going on here, and learn something about yourself and about others through storytelling. And there are very few other things I can think of that you can do in a room together that will open you up like that. Maybe movies, but there's something about live theater that just, I think, really opens the empathy channel. And it's partly why we do it, right? But I don't think any other species does it. I don't know. Do we have any other questions? Yeah. Pop over again, sorry. Who was it?
I know that this show has been read and looked over and studied from so many different angles and by so many different people. And I know that there's one question that's come up that I've heard of a few times. It's whether John Proctor was the real villain of the story. And I was honestly wondering from any of you and all of you whether or not how you interpreted the script and how you played your characters, whether or not you think that John Proctor was the real villain of the Crucible.
I will also say there is a play called John Proctor is the Villain, which we are considering doing next year because of this play.
Yeah.
Brian, would you like to talk about John Proctor as a good guy, bad guy, in-between guy?
Okay. I intentionally haven't read that play yet. I figured I'd save it for after. You can't go into any role, no matter whether you're playing Darth Vader or anyone else, thinking you're the villain. Nobody thinks they're the villain. Everybody, no matter what they do, believes on some level there's a justification for it. It might be an elaborately construed rationale. You might know deep down that what you're doing is wrong. But if you approach a character as though it's a villain, even if it's written as a villain, you're never gonna get there. You're never gonna realize the truth of that character. As to the villainy, well, I think Proctor might agree with you at some stages about that, because one of his problems is his incessant self-doubt, his inability to find his own moral compass. He has deviated, and we've talked about the black and white, the absolutism, and this is a culture, a mentality that encourages either you are perfect or you're damned. And so obviously he's done at least one thing for which he knows he will be damned. And so the rest is just, well, am I a terrible person? Am I an agent of Satan? That's a very real consideration. Even though Proctor does see through the bullshit of some of what's going on with the court, it is a real factor. And I think the tragedy of Proctor is that he doesn't figure out how to find his own moral compass until the very end. Elizabeth's been telling him all along, of course, because she understands it. Because he keeps seeking justification, some external, source. Will God judge me? Will you judge me? Will you forgive me? And she keeps saying, and she says it in various ways throughout the entire play. No, you have got to find it in yourself. And he only figures that out right at the end. So, is he a villain? In that he set all this in motion, he has certainly acted wrongly. He has abused his power and a young woman in the process. He has betrayed trust, with his wife. These are all, I don't know if you call them crimes, but they are moral failings. Because of that, because they are, because this is touched off in this petri dish of a society where one germ can infect the whole community, then yes, he is the catalyst for what happened. But beyond that, though, I think of him more as a tragic figure than a villain. He's not, after it gets picked up by the forces, the powers that be, they're the ones who are driving the bus, as it were, towards, this sort of collective delusion that's killing multiple people. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but thanks for letting me ramble for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, do we have other questions, comments? Yeah, for sure.
Why the title, The Crucible?
Why the Crucible? Well, the Crucible is a scientific little thing that they used to crush things up in and heat it up and stir it and make something new. So it's basically a testing pot.
Does it purify?
It does sometimes purify, yeah, but I mean it can be used for multiple things. But,
John
yeah.
Proctor the Crucible?
Is John Proctor the Crucible? What do you think?
To purify?
Well, I think it goes to, and the key is in what Danforth said, we burn a hot fire here, and that's
Right.
not all concealment.
Right.
This is a situation that reveals everybody in their purest form, whether that's productive or not.
Right, and I think too that when I think about, because I've read John Proctor as a villain, and it's actually a pretty good play, but I also think that it's easy to assign blame. I think everybody in the play has some thing wrong with them, and I mean John might be the most prominent, but there's every single person has something wrong with them in this play. I do think that, like you said, he's the catalyst and everything, but I think too that he is trying to be better, and that has to count for something, I think. Other question?
Just to sort of piggyback on that,
Sure.
one of Proctor's lines is, "We are what we always were, but naked now." And I think for me, that's a really powerful line, because it sort of gets to the heart of the matter of, these are just people who we run into every day and who are living their lives and who are trying to do the best they can, and at some point have strayed or have made a decision that goes against gospel or whatever it is, and all of that is being sort of pulled away. And so that line, along with "we burn a hot fire here," it's that idea of getting rid of the pretense, which Abby alludes to quite a bit. The pretense of all of these covenanted Christians. So yeah, I think it's a really apt title.
Constraints.
And, the society is so screwed up too. I mean, all the hierarchy in the society, the women not having a lot of power, and so they take power, but in a really negative way. Having these standards that almost nobody could ever live up to. I mean, it's a screwed up society too. And I mean, we can't just be like, oh, the 17th century was so terrible, because we still have a lot of these same kinds of societal structures. We like to pretend that they don't exist, but God knows they do, Any other, yeah, Mary.
I know the doctor there mentioned the whole tribalism instinct, and I think what I see as that recurring history repeating itself thing is that when the people in power feel themselves threatened, that there's other factions, there's people saying this about me, the surest way to unite your tribe is to find something common to hate, and to define that enemy and make that congeal the rest of it, and whether that's this disembodied Satan character or the people who follow him or whatever others that get defined, that seems to be the core of, how to bring your people together if they're not all on your side is point the finger at the other side.
All right. Why do we do that, Dr. Chambers?
What? Oh, sorry.
I wonder if there's a psychological reason for that. Is it fear-based? Is it something else?
Gosh, I think it's just kind of a group dynamic that our brains kind of have evolved, you know, to have. And
you're us or them.
yeah, and it gets a little bit to when there is insecurity to the group or, you know, inside the group, then you do want to scapegoat, you do want to point outside to unite the group. You know, it's kind of like, you know, if the United States enters a war that's external right now, or in the next 6 months, it will dampen internal strife. That is the dynamic we can expect. You know, and that has happened in virtually every war. I guess the Civil War not so much. It kind of split into two dimensions there. You know, two elements of it. But I think it's true. You know, it's just true. It's true in human history. And I think it's a little bit of how we tick. You know, for better or worse. And you know, I think, you know, I just want to pick up too on whether John Proctor is the ultimate, you know, source of the thing. I think just a couple thoughts. I think it's a great question. You know, for me, because I've never seen the play, which is I'm so glad I experienced it with you guys. It's been awesome. Such a great job. I think that, you know, at first when you're watching it and the witches are out there in the woods doing their thing and there's, you know, incantation. Well, I know, but you don't know what's going on, right? Where's this going, right? Is this, you know, a Halloween thing? Is this, do I suspend my belief and get into, okay, this is real evil, this is witch time? You know, is that where this is going? I don't know where this is going, right? And so the playwright kind of gets you in on that dynamic at the get-go, like at face value, there's something not good going on here or something. And so where's all this going? But, you know, I think what was great, I was watching a little girl. Is she in here, the actress? Kind of the child? Okay, they went on, oh yeah. You know, and so, you know, I think that was so brilliant because she was just playing this game, right, as a child, and having a blast. And listening to this romantic, you know, thing going on, and just sitting there giggling, you know, right? And so that, to me, that kind of allowed it. When I saw that, it was like, okay, this is all, you know, kind of sets the stage of what's going on. There's no witchcraft here. This is a whirlwind of a runaway train. And there is good and bad in all of us and all those characters. And there's good and bad in all people in the world. You know, inside the United States, outside the United States, but the whirlwinds can get going. And this group dynamic, right? And, you know, to your point, you know, your point that you know, even the real villains believe they're doing the right thing, right? So
Everybody's a protagonist in their own narrative.
right.
I think we have time for maybe one more question if someone would like to ask or make a comment. One more. Yeah.
So I did actually have a question for Elizabeth and Abigail. So I know your characters don't have a lot of power within the entire show. Were there any scenes where you felt like, oh, my character actually has some sort of power in this scene, power over her situation, versus just being completely helpless?
Yeah, I think in the courtroom scene, Abigail really demonstrates like her intelligence. She's able to sense when things are getting out of her control and then take that control back through spectacle and through manipulating this like religious upbringing that she's had her whole life. Like the bird thing is mentioned first by Hale in scene 1, and she takes that and brings it into the court. Like she's able to manipulate this culture in order to divert attention away from the truth that's really happening. And I think that's really skillful, even though it's bad. It's also skillful. Yeah.
Power. I don't know. That's a really great question. I think in the first scene, in their home, I think she tries to use her power as a, you know, as a scorned wife. I don't know. I think she consciously or not consciously, is using that power and it doesn't feel good, but that she's like grasping for it and it doesn't quite work. And then I think in the courtroom, she has power and doesn't know it. And then in the final scene, she knows she has the power and she's being demanded to use it and she doesn't want to. And so it's like all three moments for her, the power is there. But for me, I don't know that it ever aligns for Elizabeth to have it and to use it and to want it.
Afraid to use it?
Yeah,
Afraid to use it?
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I super appreciate it. Please do tell your friends to come see the rest of our performances. We would love to have them here. And can we give a round of applause to our guests?